Yeah, I started off with this idea, when I began thinking about this book, that it should be like a jewel box. And wherever you opened it, these things should be gleaming out at you, saying, look, you've just got to have me. You can't live without me. But for that, you needed a very particular sort of photograph, a really sensuous, beautiful, gorgeous image. And although these are real images, in the sense that, Andrew Lawson, the photographer, just found them all in British gardens, there is a sort of wonderful sense of drama about some of them and the life. The tulip was like a biography. It just happened to be about a flower rather than a person. But, what I was doing was telling its story, where it was born, where it had been, the adventures it had had. So, that was very much a sort of narrative. There was a story there. There was an incredible story to tell. But this bulb book was in the, sort of in my mind always as a reference book. A reference book that would contain enough beautiful, beautiful bulbs for, a whole of a gardening life. If you grow 10 new things every year, you'll still have 60 years of gardening, sort of ahead of you before you run out of all the things that are in this book. There's no point in writing a book that it already exists. But there's some excellent bulb books about, and I'm a tremendous admirer of a writer called Brian Matthew. As you'll see from the bibliography, I think every single book he's ever written is in there. But Brian hasn't been as well treated as later authors were, in terms of having a really good bunch of illustrations put in alongside the writing. And I think somehow that is what this book does. It marries writing and images. And it also, what I wanted to do was, when I was writing about these bulbs, was to get in some of those, what I thought of as backstories, if you know what I mean. The stories about where they were first discovered, the names of the people who sort of brought them from their wild places into our gardens, and who they're named after, and something about the sort of, just, to enrich our experience of these bulbs when we're wandering around the garden, that we can just sort of think about this particular bulb. It might be Iris Aucherai and the French naturalist that was named after, or Iris bucarica, named after the area that it was found in Central Asia. It's just a sort of way of trying to make a little bit more sense about their names and where they came from. It tells you its habitat, and actually it's the habitat that I think is such an incredible help to a gardener. And that's why, I knew that with all the species, with all the wild things, I wanted to get in there where it's found in the wild, because that's the best thing a gardener can know, because then you can think more clearly about how you can make it happen in your own garden. These are incredibly beautiful things. We don't need to know about their structure, their form, in the way that we do with shrubs and trees and herbaceous perennials. A bulb just exists to flower. That's all it does. It's like the best sort of dinner guest. It arrives on time, it does its fabulous thing, it sparkles, and then it goes before you get tired of it. Who could expect anything more of a plant? And that's what bulbs do. So these pictures just need to actually concentrate on the flower, because they're not pretending that they're giving you anything else. There's a few exceptions.
I couldn't agree with you more.
There's a few. It includes all the things I hope you'd expect to find there, like the alliums, like the crocus, like the camasias, like the daffodils. But it also actually tries to include things that I've grown, have been intrigued by, the Veltimias, the Gloriosa Rothschildiana, the Belvallias, things that aren't so common. And that's not because, I'm sort of trying to show off here or anything. It's just that one likes to include things that you don't see around so much if there's a good reason to grow them, and if they aren't too difficult to get hold of. Well, I'll never be able to leave tulips behind. Wherever I go, the tulips will always be, sort of the class of bulb that has just so much staggering variety in it. I mean, those genetic sort of pools from which the tulip has come. I mean, what an amazing pool that is, that it can enable that single flower called the tulip to do so many different things. And so I suppose it's the species tulips that I've grown to love particularly because they do settle and stay in a garden in a way that sometimes, the big cultivars don't. And so it's Tulipa orfanidea whittalii, which still remains way out there as my number one bulb. No picture can ever do justice to it because it is, this extraordinarily beautiful, perfect form with the pointed petals meeting in the center to make this lovely shaped bud.
Oh, yes.
And then you get this plating of cream on the outside of these sort of tangerine, toffee-colored petals. And if you could look inside that flower, which we can't in the one that is in the book, you would see that there's this beautiful smudgy green, olive green sort of base at the bottom, and imagine olive green contrasting with that lovely caramel orange brown. And it's just a thing of such staggering finesse and beauty. Iris also have that sort of elegant insolence, the way that they look at you, the perfect poise of those things, the extraordinary sort of sexiness with which that tongue lolls, out of that three-cornered flower. They are amazingly beautiful things, and they have that complexity, which is what I love most about tulips. The complexity of the markings, what's going on in the standards and the falls is often so different with an iris, and you get most beautiful markings, for instance, in that little dwarf iris, Catherine Hodgkin, or Colpocaspiana, which is, one of the iris I grew for the book. Lovely dark falls and sort of beautiful frilly mauve standards. Most of the arrangement in the book is strictly alphabetical, so with the narcissus, I just start with the narcissus that begin with A and then move through the alphabet. But it seemed to me that with the tulips, because there are more tulips in the book than it's a bigger group than any of the other sections, I thought, well, what do people first go for when they're choosing a tulip? And actually, I think it is color. That's the first thing you think of, whether you want a pale tulip, whether you want a dark one, whether you're looking for purples, whether you're looking for yellows or oranges. And that persuaded me, although I could be persuaded that it was the wrong decision, to actually arrange the tulips, although telling everybody what groups they were in, whether they were, Fosterianas or whether they were single earlies or what, to actually group them by color. Because I'm always thinking, as a writer, of the reader. What is going to be, to me, the most sensible way to actually organize the information so that the reader can most easily sort of get at what they're looking for? And I sit on a committee back in England, the Royal Horticultural Society's Daffodil and Tulip Committee, and we set up a trial of species tulips and planted 92 different species tulips in the trial fields at the RHS garden at Wisley. And our object was actually not, to try and make any judgment about their beauty. Of course, that's entirely a personal matter of taste. But to try and work out whether these did come back more easily than other tulips, and how many flowers we got the first year after planting, the second year after planting, the third year after planting. And there's absolutely no doubt that actually the species performed magnificently in that trial. And after the second and third year, we were getting more flowers from each group than we'd got in the first. It's fantastic. There is no better value than bulbs. They are staggeringly cheap. And, people go out and, waste more than that on, on other things every day. I cannot get over the cheapness of bulbs. So even if they don't come back, you still have had your $5 worth, haven't you?